Welcome to the GenX Shift podcast, a show for Gen Xers who are navigating some pretty tough transitions and aren't sure how to move forward. I'm your host, Michele Walter, proud Gen Xer, former lawyer turned entrepreneur, huge Jason Momoa fan, and margarita snob. And I've navigated a lot of transitions in my life, from losing my mom suddenly to a heart attack to starting my own business. But I often did it all on my own because I was too stubborn to ask for help. Now I'm on a mission to give actionable strategies to other Gen Xers so that they can find the confidence, courage, and clarity they need to make a shift. So let's rock and roll. Welcome back, Gen Xers. I'm really stoked to bring you this week's episode on a topic that I normally don't like talking about, and that's finances, money, wealth management. This week, I get to bring you a conversation with my friend and fellow Gen Xer, Will Hoffman of Hoffman Wealth Management. Will is one of those people who I actually feel comfortable having a conversation with about money, because as I reveal in the episode, I've got some vulnerabilities and some issues when it comes to money and wealth management, or lack thereof, I guess. Will is a phenomenal resource for all of us Gen Xers who are facing financial questions, uncertainty, planning for retirement. Oh crap, I haven't saved for retirement. How do I start to save for retirement? How can I maximize my retirement? We get into a lot of these logistical questions. And the wonderful thing about this episode is that Will talks us through a spectrum of where we are in terms of our financial well-being. We talk about situations where someone hasn't saved for retirement at all, to situations where somebody who has been saving for retirement, but maybe they want to save a little bit more or maximize that retirement. Will has some really practical strategies and steps and advice that he gives us, including, of course, the obvious, sitting down with a budget. And if a budget isn't your thing, like me, he gives us some insight into why we want to lean into making it our thing. We also talk a little bit about his running career. He just did the New York City Marathon, so we have running in connection, and we have some awesome Gen X nostalgia at the end, which is pretty entertaining. So I'm going to throw a lot of references in the show notes. This one's jam-packed. You might actually want to grab a pen and paper for this one, as well as make sure to check the show notes for the three free resources that Will has for our listeners. So sit back, write some notes for this one, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back. I am here today with Will Hoffman of Hoffman Wealth Management, and I'm so grateful to get to spend this time with you. I want to tell folks how we know each other, but I want to turn it over to you to introduce yourself first, because I'm really excited to get to talk with you. So say hi to everyone, Will.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Will Hoffman, founder and president of Hoffman Wealth Management, a wealth advisory firm just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where our primary focus is working with Gen X, through all of their financial trials and tribulations and everything they have going on. So thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure, and I am so grateful to know you. I
Likewise.
Don't even remember when we first started interacting. It's been within the last year, I think. It hasn't been all that long, but it seems like we've known each other a long time.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was through the LinkedIn group, Gen X Nation. We just came across each other's profiles, and I was and still am working on my podcast, The Monetary Mixtape, and which talks about wealth management issues that Gen X is dealing with. And just, it seemed like the message you were sending really fit into what our process is like when we're working with folks around, their values and things when it comes to their money. And it just was a kind of a logical and easy relationship to form and friendship to start building on.
Yeah. And there's a lot that we have in common, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit. And just for folks who are listening, if you don't know, on LinkedIn, there is a group called the GenX Nation that you can join. And there's also now an online platform on the Mighty Networks community that our friend Sarah Blankenship has started. She's going to be on the podcast too. That's called the GenX Nation. And so it's for all things Gen X. And yeah, that's how we kind of came across each other and just started communicating back and forth on LinkedIn and really struck up a friendship over Gen X issues as well as running issues. You're a marathoner, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that too. But
Yeah.
I was so grateful to get to be on your podcast, and I'll link that in the show notes for this so that folks can go back and listen to that. So before we get into all of that, I want to just rewind the tape a little bit and have you take us back, because I get really curious about how growing up in the 70s and 80s really influenced us and our perspectives as adults, and how it
Yeah.
may have influenced your trajectory and how you got into doing the work that you're doing. So take me back a little bit in time and tell me what was young Will like growing up in the 70s and 80s.
Oh boy. Well, young Will is a very late Gen Xer. I'm a 78 baby. So I was more 80s and 90s than 70s and 80s, but my parents are boomers. I grew up in the town that my dad was born and raised in, where my grandparents still lived. Um, Tiny town east of the city of Pittsburgh, but a tiny town with big pride, and that's still where my office is today. I live in a neighboring community now, but still a tiny town, still big pride, and um, that probably was immediately what shaped my vision of the world. Um, and I grew up fiercely independent, um, which is notorious of Gen X. Tell us what to do, tell us when you need it done, and then stay out of our way and we'll get it done. And that was sort of the way. I didn't understand why I needed to have so many rules as a kid. I wasn't going to hurt myself. I wasn't going to get myself into trouble. Now, ultimately did do both of those things, but um,
No.
didn't I just, and I'm sure my parents would agree that I still am fiercely independent, which is why my business is set up as an independent financial advisor. We have a great relationship with our broker dealer, but I just never saw myself as an employee. I grew up watching my dad run his own business, but I never saw myself as an employee. I never saw myself as a subordinate. I just never saw myself in any of those roles. And, a lot of the roles that I got into, I always found myself in a leadership position. In college, I was a student body president for 2 years. In high school, I was my senior class president. I just, and I don't know if that's, I'm 6'4", and I don't know if George Washington just sort of kind of put tall people in a bad place from the beginning, because he was a tall man and he was a leader, and everybody just started looking to the tallest guy in the room sometimes. And that happened to be me most of the time. So I just always found myself in a leadership role. I enjoyed those roles, and just never saw myself as an employee. So I gravitated towards running my own business, and I enjoyed the wealth management space. So that was kind of the path that I took. But I loved growing up in that era. I always refer to as kind of the gilded age of childhood. We still had time outside. We still, played in empty lots and played sports, and didn't have a ton of, parental involvement in our sports. We got dropped off at Little League and, told to listen to our coaches, and that was about it. We didn't have, these overbearing, parents telling us how to pitch, how to throw, where to go, how to get there. And then we still had the birth of technology kind of in our youth. We started to play Nintendo and video games, and kind of had the best of both worlds. And that's what I love so much about being a child in that era, was we kind of did it all. We had the same childhood as our parents for a lot of regard, and ushered in the childhood that our children started to understand.
Yeah, your background sounds fairly similar to mine in terms of growing up in a small town, having that unidentified pull
Mm-hmm.
to be independent and be out on your own. And like you, my dad was an entrepreneur has had his own business his whole life, businesses his whole life. My mom was an office assistant and usually worked 2 or 3 jobs at a time. And so I remember growing up never wanting to stay in Nebraska. I always knew I wanted to get out and kind of go out on my own. And while you've stayed in Pennsylvania, you still kind of went out on your own. And it sounds like
Right.
watching your dad be an entrepreneur was a big influence in that. What
Yes.
was the, do you have any recollection when you were growing up? I'm always so curious when it comes to financial issues, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, the messages that we got growing up around money. And I think you and I have
Okay.
talked about this before. I had very conflicting messages between my parents. My mom was, let's spend money on all the fun stuff and don't tell your dad. And my dad was, let's never spend any money except when it comes to buying myself a Jeep or a boat. And let's scrimp and save, and money is scarce. And so I have had a very discombobulated, unstable view of money. So I'm just curious, like growing up, looking back now, do you think there were messages that you received from your parents or from society about money that have influenced your trajectory?
Well, my folks were always very aligned with their message when it came to money. Um, my mom was the, budget master at home. She, you know, we, my brother, sister, and I never really went without, but we were encouraged to be smart with our money. They encouraged us to, they were smart with theirs. Um, we weren't allowed, if there was an opportunity to go earn, we better be taking advantage of that opportunity. Whether if there's a snowstorm, here's the shovel, hit it, kids, and go shovel driveways and make a few bucks, go cut grass. My dad had a few rental properties when we were kids. So, my brother and I would find ourselves painting. Because he owned his own business, he had to clean his own office. So that was my first job, was helping my dad clean the office every Sunday night before the beginning of the week. Um, it was never there's money all around. Go ahead and sit on your duff. It was, you better go earn. And that was probably my first sort of experience with money. So much so that, I'll never forget the look on my dad's face. And I can't wait to have the same look when my dad used to have an antique car, and there was a car show downtown in our city. And I knew that the one restaurant in town was hiring. So I said, "Hey, Dad, I'll be right back." We were sitting by his old car, and he was talking with all his other old car friends. And I said, "Dad, I'll be right back." And I went in the restaurant. I said, "Hey, I heard you guys need a dishwasher. Can I have an application?" And I think the guy was so blown away that a 15-year-old was standing in front of him asking this question. He was like, "Well, tell me about yourself." And I told him, and he goes, "You don't need an application. Can you be here Tuesday at 4:00? That's when we start." I said, "Yeah." So I went back out. I said, "Hey, Dad," and I was a little nervous, like, oh, okay, I got to get a ride to work. "Hey, Dad, can I have a ride Tuesday night at 4:00? I got a job." "Where?" He goes, at the restaurant right there." He goes, "Doing what?" "So washing dishes." He goes, and without hesitation, "Yes, I will drop everything I'm doing and make sure that you get to work at 15. Why did they hire you?" I said, "Because I asked." And he said, "Okay." So I was always kind of motivated to earn and create and not waste and spend. And I think that was the message. My grandfather, my dad's mom, or my mom's dad. Why did I get that backwards? My mom's dad was as Scotch as they come, and was very tight with his money. He was also very smart with his money. So he left a nice estate for my mom and her brother and sister, but a smart estate also. And that was kind of my motivation. We would go visit them in Florida, and he had the stock channel on and would, explain to me what I was looking at and what I saw. And, said, if you're smart with your money, you can have your money earn more money. And that always intrigued me. And then again, seeing the way that just translated into our education. By our, I mean my brother and sister and I, and knew that, listen, if me, a guy of, you know, I think I maybe even touting myself as saying I have average intelligence, can learn this, um, surely I can help other folks learn this and help other folks navigate their way through some of these, these traps and pitfalls that kind of surround money, the way our own feelings surround money. And it just kind of motivated me to down that path. And like I said, I knew I was not going to be an employee somewhere. So it just sort of made sense to get the training, learn this business, and then, hang my own shingle.
It really sounds like you had a lot of conversations with family members around money growing up. And I guess I say a lot compared to myself. I'll just speak from my own experience. There weren't
Sure.
really so much conversations as there were me observing my parents arguing over money. That was really the gist of my financial education growing up. And that, I think there are people who share both of our experiences and people who have different experiences. But I think that indoctrination or lack thereof that we got growing up around money informs our relationship with money as adults.
Yeah,
And I will be the
absolutely.
first
We
to
we get our
confess.
financial habits from our parents,
Yep. Yep.
and if you go back, and I was in a very fortunate situation. My great grandmother lived to be 101, so I still had a connection to money habits from the Great Depression. She grew up during the Great Depression, so much so that when Mima finally moved in with my grandparents, and we were getting her house ready to sell, we joked, but kind of thought we need to get into the walls and see if there's cash hidden in there, because she was a child of the Depression. So, I had a connection back to one of the worst times financially, in our history, and could see that my grandparents' money habits were born from hers, and even sometimes money habits become money. You become a bit of an antagonist to yourself. Well, my mom was cheap. I'm not going to be cheap, and again, pitfalls that you can fall into, or my folks overspent. I'm not going to. I'm going to make sure I don't do that. Sometimes that can help, but we generate our money habits from previous generations, and so much so that that's what's caused the kind of the to talk about generations. So it's caused baby boomers to have, at least what we witness as, a lot of trouble making some decisions, because they're making decisions that they didn't get to watch their parents make. In the 80s, the 401ks and IRAs were born and pensions went away. Well, baby boomers didn't watch their parents make decisions about a 401k because they didn't have one. They just made a decision about a pension and said, okay, I'm going to retire, start Social Security, start my pension, and that's it. Now I'm retired. And baby boomers had to make decisions about, what do I do with my 401k? How should I be invested? How long am I going to live? How am I going to worry about these assets passing? And their parents didn't do that. So they were running, sort of running blind on how to make these financial decisions. Now, fortunately, spent a lot of my career working with that generation, going through those decisions. That's sort of what motivated me to want to help my own generation. Is, listen, we've seen what baby boomers have had to do, mistakes that they've made, opportunities they've taken advantage of. Now it's time for me to talk to my folks, my people, my generation, about how to avoid those mistakes and take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, I think that everything you just said in terms of what we observed from our parents and our grandparents influences us in ways that we probably don't even realize. There's so much
Sure.
that is unconscious. I believe it was my great grandfather on my dad's side who was a millionaire. I just learned this recently from my dad. He was a millionaire being a blacksmith in small town
Wow.
Kearney, Nebraska, and saved all his cash under his mattress. And when he died, his sister stole all the money.
Oh, no.
So that never got inherited to my grandfather, to my dad, and down to me. And there's so much that we're becoming aware of now in terms of inherited trauma, let alone trauma that we observe in our lives, and especially when it comes to financial issues. And so I think raising our awareness around all of the ways in which our relationship with money has been impacted by our ancestors and by what we have observed in our own life. And so
Sure.
one of the things I really appreciate about you is that compared to some other financial folks, and I haven't had a lot of exposure to financial management, wealth management folks, but in our conversations, you've really struck me as someone who wants to bring that awareness to people because you care about the emotional and the mental aspects of money, not just the hard money itself. And so talk a
Right.
little bit about how your how you do your business, what your philosophy is at the Hoffman Wealth Management Group.
Sure. So, and you hit the nail on the head. It's at the end of the day, and as important as money is to our day-to-day operations, at the end of the day, we're just managing folks' money. There are people attached to these dollars. There are legacies attached to these dollars. There are, kids and grandkids' futures attached to these dollars. And as important as it is to understand what investments to buy, what investments to sell, what investments to use, what investments not to use, it's more important to understand the story behind the money, how folks earned it, how they accumulated it, what they want it to do. Do you want your last check to bounce? And listen, my heirs are on their own. Or are you creating a legacy that is going to educate generations upon generations for your family, for the community? All of those things. And again, you asked the question first, what was it like growing up with Will Hoffman? I think my sense of community, being from the town of Jeanette, where I'm from, is what drives that. It is, there's a lot of things that money can accomplish. And when we go through a scary situation or an uncertain situation, and I'll liken it to what happened with Damar Hamlin a few years ago. NFL football player goes into cardiac arrest in the middle of a football game. Scary to watch. He's a local Pittsburgh guy, so we were invested. Him and I have went to the same college, so the area was invested in his health after that. But what immediately happened was fans, people from different communities, they started donating to his charity. So we look to money as a solution. The first thing that happened after September 11th, I was at a high school football game that Friday. They're passing 5-gallon buckets around to collect money to send to victims and families that were affected. It's the first thing we do when a tragedy occurs is, oh my God, we have to get folks the money to support them during this situation. So there's so much that's tied to money that goes beyond buy this stock, sell this bond, use this annuity, whatever situation that your story creates is where the solutions come from, not the other way around. And that's probably the biggest thing that I watched baby boomers go through was, okay, I need to find a product that somebody's going to sell me, not how do I solve this financial concern, burden, issue, or opportunity. It was, hey, I have this fund you should use. I have this product you should buy. And they end up buying things that 2 years from the point of purchase, they couldn't use. They didn't make sense anymore. So, watching baby boomers go through that and making or having the decisions made around the wrong circumstance is probably what motivated our process to make sure we want to understand our people first. And when we do that, the solutions will show themselves.
That's really insightful, because I'm envisioning when folks come to you, you're hearing a variety of problems
Everything.
that they want their money to solve for. So in your experience, what are some of the problems, the issues that our generation is wanting money to solve for?
Longevity is the big one. Every generation has lived longer than the previous generation, and there's really no indication of that stopping. So that's the big concern. The other one is the noise that they hear about Social Security. I don't think it's going to be there. And actuaries in Social Security kind of keep giving us indications of when the trust fund, supposedly could start to go the other direction. And we'll let Congress and politicians figure that out. But that's a concern, is what's Social Security going to look like. Some folks said they haven't started yet, and they're, staring down the barrel of retirement in, 10, 20, 15 years. How do I get started? What do I do? We have heard it all. The big thing we see with our generation right now is they're sandwiched between parents and kids. So they have to help their parents solve some of these financial issues, whether it's, looking at long-term care facilities, dealing with their own health issues, getting ready for their parents to pass their estate, or they've already inherited their parents' money and don't know what to do. But they're trying to do all that while still raise their kids. Think about how they're going to pay for college. Think about how they're going to get their kid to Little League next week. And also make sure that the nurse is doing their job at the long-term care facility. That is the primary concern that we have, really, also talking to baby boomers, because they don't want to be that burden. But how do we navigate this ever-turning, money mixed with our calendar, mixed with our emotions scenario?
So let's pick apart some of those problems.
Okay.
And start first with one that feels very near and dear to my heart. And I've mentioned this to you, and I'm about to broadcast it to the world. And I know some people are going to shit themselves when I say this, but keep your opinions to yourself is all I can say. Let's start with the folks who have not saved for or saved sufficiently for retirement, because I am one of those, and I will fully expose myself here vulnerably. That despite having worked for the federal government for 20 years, I was always of a couple of mindsets. First of all, because I was so broke most of the time, paying student loans, paying to live in DC, which is not cheap. I wanted my money now. So I'm like, Why would I invest in my future? I need my money now. And then the second thing,
it now, you needed it now.
Needed it, absolutely.
Right.
And
There's
the second thing,
yes, and that's probably, and I hate to interrupt, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's the primary difference. Is I don't think anybody doesn't want to save. I don't think anybody doesn't want to make sure that they're investing in their future. Can they? They need the money. Their situation dictates. I have to pay rent, pay for a car, pay for health insurance, pay my student loans. Lights got to turn on. By the way, I'm hungry, so I have to eat. So, want and need become two very, very different discussions at that point.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of people in that boat. So that was the first mindset. And the second mindset that I think is very common with Gen Xers is, my retirement plan is to die. I don't imagine ever actually retiring. And those are two very problematic mindsets that I can't say I regret or begrudge myself for. And I still do now look to the future with some worry and anxiety, because I don't have a retirement savings. Whatever little bit I did have, I used to help get me through some tough times with the business and used to help fund the business. So let's start there with the folks who, like me, haven't saved for retirement or haven't saved sufficiently for retirement. Where do we start?
First thing to always do first is a budget. Part of, and I remember this clearly when I graduated from college, my first job, I was a marketing rep for a steel firm, and I had moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana,
Ew.
which
Sorry,
no,
Fort Wayne. I have no basis to say
no,
that. I don't know.
no. And to tell you the truth, I met some incredible people in Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne is the home to some very, very incredible people.
Yes, good old Midwesterners. Yeah,
But
that's
I didn't belong in Fort Wayne. It just wasn't for me. And came home. Maybe rushed home, but came home. And I remember when I was getting ready to move there, my dad's advice was always plan your work your plan. What's your budget? Do the work to know what's coming in and where it needs to go. That's the first place, regardless of age or situation that you're in. It's the first thing we tell folks that say, hey, I want to retire next month. Okay, what's your budget? How much do you need? How much do you want? Where's it going to go? So that you can have a handle on spending.
Can I pause on that for a second?
Yes.
A couple of things. The first one, and this came up in the GenX Nation community the other day, actually on the Mighty Networks platform. I think Sarah Blankenship might have asked a question about budgeting, or somebody did. And I have noticed the rebel in me, speaking of Gen X characteristics, I have that characteristic of being a rebel. I don't even like to tell myself what to do. So budgets for me have always been a challenge because I'll get gung ho. I need an Excel spreadsheet. Like I need the visual picture, and I'll do it for a while. And then it just becomes either too emotionally overwhelming or depressing, or I get overwhelmed with time and then I just don't do it. And then pretty soon I'm not paying attention to my money. Yeah. So for folks who have that kind of revulsion to budgets like I do, is there something else that you would recommend, or is there some way that you can encourage us to tweak how we feel about budgets?
You may not like what I'm about to say, but yes, you're going to have to tweak the way you feel about budget, because as someone who's fiercely independent, I'm with you. You want to get me to not do something, tell me you have to do it. And I do think that mimics our generation and is mimicked in our generation. So, but you're just, it's kind of like your diet. It's kind of like going to the gym. It's kind of like, you touched on it, we both have run marathons. It's kind of like, okay, it's long run day. The last thing I want to do is go run 20 miles today. But if I don't, they're going to find me along the street somewhere in the middle of New York City because I just collapsed in the middle of a marathon. So it's the same. And it's probably a lot more room for some psychology than it is what I have experienced. But to me, it's the same part of the brain. It's the same muscle memory. I just have to do it. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be enjoyable. I just have to get through this because the alternative is not what I want.
Yeah. And I think
it's one of those things that his book is, I'm actually watching his masterclass right now. The Atomic Habits.
Yeah. James Clear.
You can't start with, all right, sharpen my pencil. Here's my budget. Okay. I'm going to be a millionaire in this time frame. It's got to be the habits. Okay, listen. The first habit is knowing where the money goes and knowing where it goes every month, not just this January. And then, okay, now there's extra. What do I do? Okay, now how do I create or have an investing discipline? And that's where a professional comes in and says, okay, now you have X amount of dollars extra a month. Here's an investing discipline. Yes, there's going to be good weeks, good months, bad months, good quarters, bad quarters, but that discipline becomes paramount to your feelings. It becomes paramount to what 535 folks in Washington say. It comes paramount to whatever the media tells us. My investment discipline and my savings discipline become ultimately what's more important than any of that other outside stuff. Because, I mean, you look back through history, there's always been a reason to be afraid and not invest. Presidential assassinations, pandemics, terrorist attacks, market collapses because of, housing crisis, technology collapses because of overzealous buying in the 90s. There's always been a reason to be fearful, and the market's proven us wrong every time. And it's having that discipline that goes along with the saving that becomes important. And yes, unfortunately, the only solution I have is we've even got to ignore our own noise and our own BS when it comes to that sometimes.
Yeah, and I think I might offer up a tweak to that just a little bit, because sort of underneath what I hear you saying is so important, and coming back to what James Clear talks about too, when we're trying to develop these habits, whether it's habits of doing a budget or our spending or investing, we want to get really clear on our why and our who.
Right.
And so it comes back to what you were saying earlier about the stories behind money and what is the problem that we're solving for.
Right.
And so for someone like me, I think that the tweak I would make, because the word discipline feels I revolt against that word discipline. Right. I want to find what is my why. And so for folks like me who might hate budgeting or struggle with it, what I've noticed works for me, at least, is that I want to look ahead to what is the problem that I'm solving for by being more aware of my money and doing this budgeting, and what value, and this is what we talked about on your podcast, what value, what's my why is that honoring, so that I know who I want to be. So for example, I am someone who is taking care of myself in retirement. And when we can tap into those more mental and emotional aspects, that for me gives me the fuel to sit and do my budget.
Mm-hmm. That and after having these conversations hundreds and hundreds of times over the last 22 years, the value that you're expressing, not even with what you just said, but with your rebellious feelings towards the budget, is freedom is probably one of your biggest values.
Yep.
And listen, money does one thing and one thing only, and it gives us options. That's it. The more money you have, the more options you have. And freedom comes with more options. So to build that freedom that you so desire into the next 20, 30, 50 years, those habits have to be budgeting, taking the extra, having a financial discipline to it, having an investment discipline to it, having someone that can help you along the way, to achieve that freedom. And it's kind of ironic that your desire for freedom with the budget is going to put that, that limitation on the freedom 20 or 30 years from now.
Yeah.
But it is. Well, I mean, you're exactly right. That's the value that's emerging just from this. Man, your listeners are really getting a view into how the sausage is made when it comes to going through this sometimes.
Totally. Because that's just it. It's about looking at a long-term value.
Right.
Not as opposed to, but yeah, you could certainly honor a short-term value of freedom of not sitting down and doing the budget. Mm-hmm. The long-term value of freedom is more important to me, so I want to choose that. So yeah, there's some mindset work. So if there are folks who are struggling to do a budget, to even save, and look, there's probably some fear that comes into that too, right? It's getting really clear on your why and your who, which I really love that you brought in the atomic habits piece of that. Yeah. So say that somebody, they're like, okay, I'm going to do a budget. What do you recommend then when somebody does the budget? And again, we're talking about somebody who hasn't saved for retirement. Most of the time, those are going to be folks who are like I was and still am on some days, struggling with them. I need the money now. Mm-hmm. So how do you encourage people to have a budget that both allows them to take care of their now and still invest something in their future?
So the big thing is, if there's room in the now for sacrifice, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. If it's $10 a month, if it's $50 a month, just getting that habit built, because And I'm going to use your situation as an example. You said, listen, my money's going into my business. At a certain point in time, your business is going to grow and develop. And you're going to be coming from more of a place of abundance than you are today. But if those habits are built over $50, now start imagining what happens when those habits are developed and it's $500 and it's $5,000 and it's $50,000. And now those habits are developed and now that freedom is achieved. And now you can say, listen, I'm not working this year. I am going to take the time. I'm going to go see what I want to see. I'm going to go be with who I want to be with. And that's it. But because those habits were developed, like you said, you and I are runners. Kipchoge didn't lace him up for the first time and almost break 2 hours in a marathon. He developed the habits, developed the discipline that he is now not even at the mercy of bad days. The discipline's there. I don't want to do it. Too bad. The discipline is I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go run. I'm going to go do this class. I'm going to go do the strength training. And I will see you guys at the finish line. I'll be the one with the gold medal around my neck. And it's inspiring to watch that. And he realizes through discipline, no human's limited. But it takes that uncomfortable process of the now to develop that freedom that eventually you'll get.
What just popped into my head as you were describing that is that if somebody, even on a limited income right now, can start saving 1%, when it comes to the point in time when they're making more money, and I'm all for not only saving, but let's also figure out how we can make more money. Sure. One of the business coaches I follow, Rachel Rogers, has a fantastic book called We Should All Be Millionaires. And her big focus is, let's figure out, money is abundant. Money's everywhere. Let's figure out more ways to make money. But if somebody starts out at 1% of their income, then as they make more money, that 1% grows.
Right.
So you can keep developing that habit by starting small, right, and keep up the consistency so that it continues to grow over time. So I really love that.
Yeah, that and like you indicated, Rachel. I mean, what a time to be alive when it comes to making money. I mean, start a podcast. You can't, it's a YouTube channel. There's so much opportunity that our generation didn't have. We had to go sit in a cubicle, be chained to a desk, work 9 to 5. There was no alternative. I'm envious of millennials and Gen Z when I look at what the opportunity they have in front of them. They can, graduate, and what are you going to do? I don't know. I'm going to figure that out and create a YouTube channel, become an influencer. I mean, just the opportunities that exist, and just for Gen Xers that are listening, that's not unique to millennials or Gen Z. We have plenty of time. We are not too young. We can figure this out. Or too young. I'm sorry. We're not too old. We are not inexperienced. We have the tools that make this an exciting time to be alive. I mean, if a 75-year-old wants to start a podcast and profit from it to enhance their retirement, golly, the stuff that's available that wasn't. There's a travel couple that my wife and I follow. I say, man, if we could have done this 25 years ago without kids, the things we could have seen and experienced, before. So, and they're millionaires now by traveling the globe and documenting it. And the rest of us, we're probably watching mostly out of envy than anything.
Yeah, but you're so right. We're never too old. And now is the time that we can really start to be creative about our money.
Right.
And so coming back to this example with somebody, say they've done their budget, they're ready to start looking to save more for their retirement or invest, but they're afraid to go talk to a financial person, maybe doesn't even know for sure, well, what type of financial person am I looking for? What advice can you give to somebody who is dipping their toe for the first time into finding a financial support system?
Sure. So, I mean, we had alluded to it in the past or a few minutes ago. I mean, it's no secret that my profession comes with its own baggage. There's been the Bernie Madoffs, there's been other scams, schemes reasons to not trust us. I would say that as a consumer now is probably the best time because our industry has been cleaned up substantially. Through regulatory changes, the best interest standards are now, regardless of part of this profession you're in, we have to be doing what's in our client's best interest. We're obligated to. So there's probably no better time to be working with a financial professional. I'll always be a proponent of the independent financial advisor because we are committed to our clients. We are not beholden to a firm or a product or a company. We are beholden to our clients first. They are who, quite frankly, pay our bills. They are who help us educate our kids, feed our families, put roofs over their heads. Our clients are the ones who are our raving fans when it comes to helping grow our business. And that's not unique to Hoffman Wealth Management. That is across the board. Some of the best people I know are independent financial advisors. We're getting ready to go to Boston for a conference of our RRA group, and it'll be 300 or 400 independent financial advisors, and it'll be 300 or 400 of some of the best people that I know, and the folks that are in this profession who all, think like us, have their clients' best interest at heart, and really are there for their communities, their clients, and their friends and family, and that's an independent financial advisor, in my opinion, becomes the most valuable asset to somebody that's just getting started or worried about where to start.
So when you say independent financial advisor, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking for myself and folks who don't have experience with this world, that is different than, and I don't want to name names because I don't want to get sued, but then some of the big name, like
Right.
financial people we see on commercials, you're talking about folks who have their own shop and aren't under the umbrella of some bigger company.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
They hang their own shingle. Their names are on their business card. They're, and they're easy to find. A Google search will find them if you're looking in your region. It's a LinkedIn search will help you find them. They're everywhere. They're in every community. You probably know them. They're the ones whose names are on the back of your kids' Little League jerseys. They're the ones who sponsor the football programs. They're the ones that are tied into the community and tied into their clients' best interest. And fortunately, it's 2024, and you can work with anybody you want, anywhere you want, given the Zoom environment that we're in now. So always feel free to call us if you are.
That's what I was going to ask. So you don't
having questions.
You don't have to find somebody in your state. You can reach out to anybody.
We are licensed by state, but organizations can operate in any state, not just the state they're domiciled in, I guess is the best way to put that. Yes.
That's good to know. And so what about the investment? And I don't mean investment in the stock market, but I mean upfront financial investment. Because I know I have this impression that in order to work with a wealth management advisor or a financial advisor, you need to have a lot of money to even walk in the door. Is that true or not?
No. Our firm does not have a minimum. And I guess just because of our mission, we're here to help people. And there's, we have a young advisor in our firm. There's young independent advisors that are getting started every day that are just as staunch with their values as we are. Quite frankly, that's what we hire first, is based on values. Everything else we can teach, we can coach, we can let them learn from my experience. I want someone that with a high conviction to their values before anything else. And there's minimums are, you'll run into them. There are some firms that have minimums. There are a lot of firms that don't, and they're just have just as much conviction to help as we do.
So that shouldn't be a deterrent to
No,
someone
not at all.
finding a financial advisor. You don't need to have a lot
Correct.
of money up front. You just need to do your legwork to find somebody
Right.
who sounds like really can create that connection with you. And
Right.
so the other hurdle I can see for people, and I guess speaking again from my experience, is that a lot of people might be afraid to talk to a financial advisor because they fear the judgment. There's so much of our self-worth that's wrapped up in money.
Sure.
Like nobody wants to go in and hear how screwed they are for retirement. So what would you say to somebody who again is looking for a financial advisor? How can you kind of assuage some of the fear that they might have to going in and
Well,
finding somebody?
I'm going to take maybe a devil's advocate approach to this. Um, if you're not healthy, if you smoke, if you're overweight and you go in to see a doctor, the doctor is doing you no help by saying, everything's great. Keep doing what you're doing. That doctor only helps you by saying, you got to quit smoking. You got to lose some weight. You got to start exercising more. You got to start eating better. It hurts to hear it. We don't want to hear it, or we avoid going to the doctor because we know it, but we don't want to hear it. And we're not helping ourselves either. That's kind of the same set of emotions that you're referencing there. Yeah, you may hear, hey, listen, things aren't looking great. You have a lot of work to do to get yourself ready for the goals that you have. But let's put a plan in place to get you there, and let's execute that plan. Let's plan our work. Let's work our plan. And would you rather have had an advisor maybe not tell you the truth? Would you rather have had a doctor say, everything's great, and then 2 years later, your heart explodes? Or would you rather have a doctor say, this is how we're going to get you healthy. This is going to be the plan. And I'll see you in 3 months and we'll see how we're doing against that plan. That's how doctors save lives before there's an illness, before there's an injury, before there's a traumatic event. That's how advisors help their clients before it is too late. You may hear something that you don't want to hear. Now, I will also promise you, at least when it comes to our firm, we're not judging you. We're not there to judge you. We shouldn't be. Nobody should be really there to judge anybody. But we're not there to judge you. We're there to help you. Doctors aren't there to shame you. They're there to help you live. It's kind of the same instance.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because there can be so much shame wrapped up in money and
Sure.
in our credit score and in our
Mm-hmm.
bank accounts and in our retirement accounts or lack thereof. And so to know that folks have a soft place to land and to be able to look at finding the right financial advisor, just like finding the right doctor, the right therapist, the right coach,
Right.
is so important to know that you truly are going to be supported and have somebody hold you accountable.
Right.
So let's shift just a little bit because that I think that's great insight for folks who are just kind of starting out and who don't really have their retirement, their future sort of planned out. I hope that folks got some nuggets from that. Tell me, I can coming back to the the independent Gen Xers that we love to tout about ourselves,
Yes.
which is both a blessing and a curse because that often means we don't ask for help. So I imagine there are a lot of Gen Xers out there who are like, screw working with somebody, I can do this myself. What advantages or benefits are there to having a financial advisor that will help you more than trying to do it on your
Sure.
own?
It goes because you're right. I mean, there's 4 different news channels dedicated to my profession. There are an infinite amount of websites and resources to find data and information on investing. Um, but only a financial advisor is going to give you that psychological pep talk or talk you off of the ledge when it comes to making a mistake that a website won't. That when the market does have some volatility, and listen, that's going to happen. That's going to happen every year. There's going to be lousy times in the market. There's going to be down periods. It's inevitable. And there's hiring one of us is not going to eliminate that. And I mean, just as a side note, if somebody is telling you that it will, you're in the wrong office.
Run the other way.
You're on the wrong Zoom session. Hit the leave button. None of us lock our doors when our clients come in. Get out of there. But what they will do is hold your hand through those periods, explain to you how to behave through those periods, explain to you why you're having the emotions or feelings, because our money gets tied to our belly. We're having those emotions from a place of uncertainty, a place of scarcity, a place of discomfort, and not a place of, oh, wait a second. Yeah, the market's down. Yeah, my stomach hurts. Yeah, this sucks. But maybe there's some opportunity here. And how do because we don't see that, sure as hell don't see it when we turn on the television during those time frames. Everybody's touting out their markets in turmoil, special programming, and scaring us even more. And the guys whose names were on the buildings in New York City, they were having a much different reaction during the Great Depression than the rest of us. Yeah. Much different reaction on Black Monday than the rest of us. A much different reaction during the tech wreck than the rest of us. A much different reaction during the financial crisis. They were looking at it from a place of opportunity, not a place of, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Well, we have a saying in the legal profession that you've probably heard, that a lawyer who represents themselves has a fool for a client.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to a lot of areas in life, that somebody who's trying to represent themselves when it comes to their finances might have a fool for a client, because It sounds like what a good financial advisor will do is not only be able to kind of hold your hand and support you through those tumultuous times in the market, but also be able to normalize some things for you, give you a peek behind the curtain, give you some inside, right. I don't mean inside trader, but like inside information that, can help you.
Keep your eye on the ball. I mean, that's
right.
We keep talking about our youth, or literally keep your eye on the ball. Yes, this is what's happening around us. Has it changed your values? Has it changed your goal? Has it changed? No. Okay. That's what's first thing to realize. Has the goalpost been moved? And if the answer is no, then we can help. If the answer is yes, then we have to help a different way. It's just like your health.
Yeah.
It's, during COVID is a great example. I mean, it's the first time we really experienced outside noise when it came to our health. And folks with different conditions had to react differently than folks that didn't have them. And it was unfortunate, but they had to do it for their own safety, and then, we had to do it for their safety in some regard. So there was some different reaction for everybody. And it comes the same with the market. If the market's down, if we're in markets of turmoil, if we're in an enhanced amount of volatility, how does that align to your goals, your values first, before we think about what's happening outside or around us?
Yeah. Well, and coming back to the health example, if you have a hernia or you have some kind of health condition, a lot of us are going to Google how to take care of myself, but you're not going to Google how to do surgery on myself when it really comes down to it. Like, you need some folks who can walk you through this. And it sounds like that's what not only you guys do, but a good financial advisor will do.
I said to when we work with engineers, do you want to drive across a bridge that I built?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the answer should always be no. You don't want to drive across a bridge that I built.
No. So let's talk about, we've kind of covered the folks who are just starting out, those who might be fearful of financial advisors, those who want to try and go it on their own. Let's shift and talk about the folks who have been saving and who have been trying to set up their future. What's some advice that you give folks who really maybe are on track or almost on track?
Sure.
What are some of the key tips that you give to folks who are already down that path a little bit?
It never hurts to keep analyzing your goals. Athletes are always analyzing their performance, their health. World record holders are still analyzing how they're doing for themselves. So keeping on top of how you're tracking towards your goals is important. Again, regardless of the amount of money you've saved. You know, the targets change a little bit. It becomes sometimes more about avoiding pitfalls than it does finding opportunity. Avoiding, the tax impact on our money, avoiding, a rogue beneficiary or rogue heirs or changes in tax code or changes in estate codes and things become very, very important. Earning it's just part of it. Keeping it and keeping it protected becomes important. That kind of goes into the spending when it's time to retire. The GenX, we're probably on the listening part of this conversation right now, but discussing with your beneficiaries the values of your money. We just did a workshop on that a couple of weeks ago about, yes, it's great to pass money, but do your beneficiaries know what it took to earn this? I'll promise you they will have a much different reaction to receiving it when they do know what it took to earn this and to save this and the discipline that was involved.
So that your kid doesn't go out and blow it on
right.
a week in Vegas, that they actually know what it took for their parent to earn that money and what it represented. Yeah.
Right. And that's, again, that's where an advisor helps, because we can communicate those values to beneficiaries. We like to meet them, to know them. We want to know as much about our clients' lives as we can. But communicating those values to the charity that you're passing your money to the communities that are going to be the benefactor, all of those things becomes just as important as saving it, accumulating it, picking investments. It's invaluable when it comes down to it.
Yeah. And you mentioned reevaluating your goals, which I think is so important because those can change over time for a number of reasons. When we are thinking about trying to set up for our future and save for whether it's retirement or potentially save for any health issues down the road, what would you say is sort of, and I know it can be different for every person, but what's a good place to start with that end in mind? How do you first formulate that kind of goal?
It has to come through discussion, and primarily it has to start with discussion at home before you can even have those discussions in our office. And sometimes those are different. Those are probably the toughest conversations, with the folks at home, with this money, with what you've earned, what those goals are. And you're right, they change. Kids go to now you thought you were saving for an in-state tuition, and all of a sudden Ivy League's an option. Oh geez, now what? The moving. Hey, my kids moved to California and we want to be near our grandchildren, but we were living in a state that had no state income tax. What do we do? How does that change things? I want to move to a different state to be closer to my family. All of those things, the lines of communication become so vital and so important. And I don't think my wife would ever say that I under communicated in any regard, which I'm learning is not always a good thing, but it is, to me, it becomes invaluable. I'd rather know too much than not enough, especially about our clients, especially about their goals. And just like a doctor would rather know more than less about your health. Would rather know the things that are important, because that's how they can intervene and help. That's how, when things change and all of a sudden my blood pressure's higher, what happened? Well, you smoked for 20 years and now that's having an impact where it didn't before. Okay, now my son moved to California. I'm going to go be near them. Okay, well, that's going to change things when it comes to your state taxes. And this is how we have to course correct it. The communication becomes so incredibly vital through the process of achieving, accumulating, keeping wealth.
Yeah, and I want to sort of break down into some nuts and bolts a few things that you've said. And you and I think have talked about this before. So let's take kind of an example of somebody comes into your office and says, I've been saving for my retirement, but I only right now looks like I'm going to have $1 million saved, and I want to have $5 million saved. One of the things that I know we've talked about, and I think you've mentioned to me, is that your first question is asking that person, why do you think you need $5 million? So
Right.
let's start there. So walk me through that kind of situation. How would you deal with somebody coming in your office with wanting to increase their retirement?
The first thing is why. Again, does your income dictate that you need to have 5 million? Does your lifestyle in retirement dictate that needs to be your goal? Sometimes it's listen, I set out a mission that I want to pass $5 million to my church before I pass away, or when I pass away. So that's okay. There's so many different reasons to have that. I just feel more free with $5 million than I do with $1 million. Is often the answer. I can make the choices that I want to make and not have money be the catalyst to the decisions I make. It becomes so vital. And then, the next question is, what are you willing to do? Because if any of my peers are telling you, yeah, I can turn $1 million into 5 in a few years, again, leave the Zoom, get out of the office. You're in the wrong place. Here's what we can do to help. What adjustments are you willing to make? Is your risk tolerance doesn't allow you to be investing that aggressively? Does your budget not allow you to be saving that aggressively? Are you invested to even achieve that goal? Because I can tell my trainer, hey, I got a marathon on the calendar in 6 months and I'm running a 3-hour marathon. I could hire the best trainer in the world. And unless I'm willing and capable of putting in the effort to do that, it's not happening. And I've hired a really good trainer and it's still not happening because I don't have the lifestyle to dedicate to get across the finish line in 3 hours. It's just not happening. So what are you capable of doing? Because if my trainer said, yeah, I'll get you there. You don't have to worry about doing anything. I'll get you there. He's not being truthful and helping me. If a doctor doesn't give you the right advice, if an accountant doesn't give you an attorney doesn't give you the right advice, let me rephrase that. If they're giving you the right advice, but you're not willing to take it or make adjustments on your own, it's not going to happen. And it does. It comes back to the beginning of the conversation. Listen, I'm rebellious. I'm not going to do what you say. Okay. Good luck with that, I guess is the best way to approach that.
We recenter them back to, well, what's important to you long term?
What's important?
And how can we help you choose that now in this moment, even when you don't want to? So a couple of examples.
Because you have to get exceptionally, I mean, there's a lot of information for us to be able to look things up and pick investments. But sometimes you have to strike gold. And we know how incredibly rare and lucky you have to be sometimes to do that.
Yeah. I want to take a couple of the examples that you mentioned at the beginning and just a little bit ago too, in terms of taking care of kids, taking care of aging parents, and also potentially planning for our long-term health care. So on those 3 topics, what are some sort of rapid fire 1 or 2 tips that you can give to folks to address those 3 areas?
The biggest thing I see is the guilt that folks have about keeping their eye on their target and not on somebody else's. And that becomes something that unfortunately we just have to work through. I would say, and maybe this is just my experience, I don't think any of us should feel guilty about taking care of our kids and keeping them as a priority given those scenarios, especially if you're part of that sandwich generation. I don't think any grandparent or parent would make you feel guilty. And I'm sure there's extenuating circumstances or one-offs there. But the other thing is when it comes to that situation, and we're going to have a guest on our podcast when we relaunch the next season here shortly, you can't plan that stuff far enough ahead. Talking with she's a dementia family caregiving coach. And I think Lizette, yeah, I think she's going to be in our I think she's a part of the LinkedIn group of GenX Nation, if I'm correct.
Yes. I'll put her information in the show notes too.
Her and I had a great conversation leading into our next season of our podcast. And I just use my own situation. There's three of us, my brother, sister, and I. My parents still very healthy. My brother lives in Virginia. My sister and I still live close to my parents. I said to her, how do you do this? My brother will be dealing with his own guilt that he can't be here and help. My sister and I will be dealing with our own, maybe grudge that, hey, he's not here to help. Why do we have to do everything? How do you deal with that? She goes, start planning now. Parents are healthy. You guys hopefully have nothing to plan for, but listen, your brother is going to be in charge of these tasks because he can do those remotely. And you and your sister will take on these tasks because they're achievable from close to home. And if you map that out early and you have a plan, when something happens quickly, there's no need to panic. It's kind of like a Navy SEAL approach to planning. Those guys are trained for everything. Every scenario has been gamed out, and they hope to never need to use any of it. And applying that same approach to some of the things in our own lives is important. It's like when you were in elementary school and they told you to have a fire plan at home. Hey, if your house catches on fire, what are you going to do? Not a bad idea, right? To know where to go, what driveway to get into, what neighbor's house to run to for the kids. This is no different. It protects mom and dad's money. It protects mom and dad's health. It protects our own family situation, our own money, our own mental health. If that stuff's planned and we never use it, great. If it's planned and we have to use it, break the glass and, let's go.
Yeah, that's so important because for so many reasons, it's hard for us to not only look at our own death, which is coming.
Sure.
It's also hard for us to look at our parents' death if our parents are still around. Some of us don't have our parents around. But to look at the death as well as the potential physical health issues that we can encounter down the road. And I think your message is so well received that it's never too early to start planning for those things. And we need to sort of learn how to deal with our fear and the guilt around those issues so that we can take care of ourselves, our parents, and our kids. Again, coming back to that long-term vision.
What becomes important too is, if I've thought about it, okay, what happens if mom and dad need my help? And my sister has thought about it, and my brother has thought about it, and we haven't shared those thoughts. What happens when it's time to break the glass? You have three people breaking three different glasses and pulling out three different plans. And one says, well, no, this is how I wanted it to go. Well, the other one says, no, this is what I think. And now you're just making that situation so much more stressful while all three of you, well-meaning, had everybody else's best interest in mind, but you all had your own idea that you were sleeping on for years. That now, that's the catalyst to happiness is when reality meets expectations, right? Well, when that doesn't happen and we're unhappy, it's just because our expectations aren't being met. Even though everybody's trying to do the right thing, now you have, potential family situations that just could have been alleviated by saying, hey, here's my idea. What's yours? Okay. Brother, what's your idea? Okay,
Yeah.
here's what we're going to do. And we're going to pull these ideas from here. Here's the plan. Okay, put it behind the glass. Let's hope we never have to break it. We have a fire extinguisher. We hope we never have to use it. Let's hope we never have to break it. But if we do, and the situations that we've seen as advisors be the most successful are the ones that have planned that prior. And maybe they experience it with mom, and now it's time to experience it with dad. And the situation with dad is much smoother because they've been through it before.
Yeah.
But when we've seen those planned out ahead of time, those scenarios are much smoother. And sometimes it's the parent that have said, okay, if I need this, here's how it's going to go. But like you said, we're not all ready to face our own demise.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's a lot of denial. So it's sort of, helping people get real with the fact that denial isn't going to help you long term. So
no one's got out alive yet, right? It's 100% of the time.
You are preparing 3 awesome resources for our listeners. So can you tell me a little bit about those?
Sure.
I'll make sure those are all linked in the show notes.
We have one for each scenario that we've kind of discussed today. If you're just getting started or don't know where to start, it's what to do to start working with a financial professional, what to do to prepare yourself, what to do to kind of understand the process that you should go through. The second one is 9 pitfalls to avoid. If you are planning, you are saving, you are investing, you have been doing this on your own, or you've been scattered with who's been doing this for you and why. It's just really 9 pitfalls to avoid, because avoiding those pitfalls are just as important as it is taking advantage of opportunities or taking advantage of accumulation. And the third one is a satisfying retirement. What it takes when you're there, when you can see the goal line and know, okay, what are the next steps that are necessary? And it is, as soon as we can get a fourth situation together about the caregiving and things, we're going to have that ready to roll on our website, hoffmanwealth.com. And again, keep checking the monetary mixtape. We're in the process of getting ready to record and start season 2. So Lizette will be a guest for certain to kind of get that. Again, I almost didn't want to get off the call with her. We talked about so much and just took a lot from our conversation that I could immediately get to our clients. So I know that's going to be someone to listen to and to follow for our generation when it comes to, helping our parents deal with just sort of the diminished capacity.
I can't wait to talk to her. She sounds amazing.
Yeah,
and so, you
incredible.
You have the monetary mixtape, which I'll make sure and link in the show notes. An awesome podcast. I've listened to several episodes of it, and there's always such digestible nuggets that I can take away from your conversations there.
Thank you.
And also the link to the resources and the Hoffman Wealth Management website. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Where else can folks find you, or how can they reach out to you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. Just listed as Will Hoffman on LinkedIn. Very active on there, share a lot of our research. We have a great Facebook page, which kind of mimics what we're doing on LinkedIn, if that's your preferred avenue. But LinkedIn's a great place to follow not only our own stuff, but we share a lot of things from our peers there as well. It's a great place to get some resources and things.
Awesome. I'll put that in there too. And before we go, so 2 things I want to end on. First, we're going to do first I want to talk briefly about your marathon and fun planning and running. And second, we're going to do a lightning round. So you ran the New York City Marathon this past fall.
Yes.
Tell our listeners
that's
a little bit.
Loose definition of what I did. I had a bad day. I finished, I completed. I had a tough day in New York. I didn't sleep great the night before. The weather got a little warm but those are all excuses. I went out too fast and was a little undertrained, I think. But New York was my 7th marathon. It was actually the second time I did New York. I did Chicago the year before. These last two have come as part of a charity team for the Children's Tumor Foundation. They
Yeah,
help.
can you talk about that just a minute and
Sure.
give
My
listeners where
oldest
they can
son
find more?
has a condition called neurofibromatosis, and it's a condition where tumors grow on nerve endings throughout the body. It is actually one of the most common birth defects that are around. About 1 in 2,000 people are born with it. And we have two organizations that we participate in this running and fundraising for. Our local charity, the NF Clinics of Pittsburgh, and then the Children's Tumor Foundation, which dedicates a lot to research and development on treatments. And I'm hopeful and confident that one day a cure. Through the people that I've seen with these organizations, for the people that I see run and are affiliated with them, we're going to beat this thing at some point. There's just some incredible people, some incredible science, and we're going to get there. But the Children's Tumor Foundation team last fall between between New York, Chicago, and Berlin, we raised about $360,000 for Children's Tumor Foundation. Kind of mimicked what we did the year before with Chicago, Berlin, and New York. And that has become my reason for doing it now, just to kind of get the message across to my son. Yeah, it's tough, but you can still change the world, and this is how we're going to do it. And he's getting ready to do his first 5K as part of the Pittsburgh Marathon week, and he's searching for 100 people to run with him. Have everybody raise $250 and be able to start making his own contribution to the cause as well.
That's amazing.
So
How inspiring.
I'm glad he's paying attention.
Yeah. Well, and it gets back to it's what a great way to summarize everything we've talked about is that even though you had a less than ideal experience in the New York City Marathon, you had that bigger why. You were tapped into something that you knew down the road is more important than the misery in that moment.
I think what actually exhausted me the fastest, I had a shirt on in the CTF colors, and it just said "For Liam." It was a blue shirt with green letters that said "For Liam." And as soon as you get across the Verrazano's Bridge into Brooklyn, you are met with, you now have 24 miles left of some of the most passionate marathon fans that you could ever run in front of. And it's more fun to see them than most folks would say it's not fun to run a marathon, but it's so much fun to see them. And I remember the first New York City Marathon I did in 2018. The last 2 miles through Central Park, hearing people cheer for you in 30 different languages, it's something I'll never forget. It'll be with me forever. But folks they were giving me high fives and, do it for Liam. And every time they would do it, I'm an emotional guy. I would tear up. And I think I just emotionally drained myself through the first part of that marathon because I was so inspired by what these folks were doing. They never met Liam. They didn't even know what or why, but they took on my mission. At least for the third of a second that I passed them, it was for Liam. And it was just incredible. And that's our new why, is to do this from a running standpoint. I don't know I'm sure I will at some point do another marathon. The, chasing three boys around and running a business consumes me and can't make that a priority right now. But going to marathons and passing that forward is important for me right now. And being involved with these running teams is something that I hope to do for a long time.
I love cheering on at races, marathons, triathlons, whatever it is, because you get such a charge.
Fun than running them, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I would much rather be the cheerleader than the participant any day. And I love you sharing that experience because what a powerful connection that seems to have created.
Yeah, so Liam he's going to be one of the NF heroes for the Chicago Marathon this year. Again, we did that last year. It was kind of funny. We took my folks with us to Chicago, and when you're watching a marathon, you still have to kind of traverse through to get to where you're stationed. And my dad was like, "Man, we're walking a long time." I said, Dad, I wouldn't let the 30,000 people that are out there on the street hear you complain about your 7-block walk right now. Let's just keep that to yourselves and get to where we're supposed to be.
My mom and her fiance did the same thing to me the first time I ran the Marine Corps Marathon. I finished destroyed. And they had the gall to say to me, "God, we were really exhausted. We had to get on the metro and there was like a ton of people and we had to walk all over." And I'm like, I don't want to hear it.
Right.
Thanks for your support, but no, it's not the same thing. All right, so let's do our lightning round really quick.
All right, take it easy.
Fondest, yeah, I will. Fondest Gen X childhood memory.
Nintendo. Opening Nintendo in 1986 was
Yeah.
probably the signature Gen X. I actually just got a T-shirt delivered yesterday, and it's I actually got two T-shirts delivered. One is Bo Jackson scoring a touchdown on Tecmo Bowl, and the other one is the passcode for Contra, the up, down, down, left, right, BA select start. It's just that in the T-shirt. So
I missed that when I was playing
Yeah.
Nintendo. I did not know that. Yeah, Nintendo, man.
But I mean, my entire childhood was a highlight. It just, Gen X was that. Still friends with guys I played sports with are still some of my best friends. Just the entire childhood of Gen X was a highlight.
That's awesome. Biggest piece of advice for other Gen Xers going through any transition at this stage of life?
Keep your goals and values at the center of the decision-making process. A lot of outside influences, a lot of keeping up with the Joneses, a lot of things that that can distract you, but keeping your own goals and values at the center, it becomes very, very important. And don't let anyone convince you that you're being selfish by doing so. It's your life, it's your existence. Keep it at the center, keep your goals there, and everything will turn out okay.
I'm going to second that big time. If you were a professional sports player or marathoner, whatever it might be, what would be your Gen X introduction or walk-on theme song?
Oh boy. So I'm a hip hop junkie. Probably Juicy by Notorious B.I.G. would be my, because it would all be a dream if I were a professional athlete. So that would be probably my Gen X walk-on music would be Notorious B.I.G.
I love it. I did not peg you as a hip hop fan, so now
Yeah, I am.
I can't get that image out of my head.
I'm doing this. It's Casual Friday in our office. I have my Air Force Ones on. I am I'm a born and raised hip hop junkie, and that's the part that's so great about Gen X is we took so much and transformed it. We went from one kind of rock and roll to classic rock, grunge rock, headbangers ball. We took the rap and turned it into hip hop and R&B. I mean, it just, we were part of so much transformation when it came. It's just music.
I do. And I want to note something I've been sort of realizing recently, especially in thinking of like podcast guests that I want to have. The people who were making that music, some of them, especially in the grunge era were more our age, but they were boomers. Like it's the boomers that were making this music.
I'll tell you what,
that was part of our generation.
A great series to watch, and it's a 4-part series. It's a great 4 hours of television. Is a series called The Defiant Ones. You want to talk about rebellious in our generation? The Defiant Ones is about the Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre, and how Jimmy Iovine had his hands on Bruce Springsteen's album, and then brings to us West Coast hip hop. And Jimmy Iovine, I'm not quite sure how old he is, but I'm sure I'm going to Google that right now. He's probably a boomer.
That just gave me goosebumps listening to. I'm going to look that up. I hadn't heard of that series.
You learn so much about art, creativity, business, tenacity, discipline. I mean, it is what you think MTV told you is such a just a very, very scarce part of what was going, and the minds of the men and women behind the birth of something like that. The tenacity of Jimmy Iovine is enough to motivate anybody, but it is a great 4 hours. You could love hip hop. You could not like hip hop. You will have an appreciation for what happened when you watch that series. I don't know where it's streaming right now. It kind of bounces around between streaming series, but it's a great. Sorry, this is turning into less of a lightning round.
No, that's a
continuation of our conversation.
I love it. This is like the really fun part. Not the financial stuff isn't fun, but no, this is the really fun part. I'm going to find it and I'll link it in the show notes.
It's awesome. It's really
on
incredible.
On that note, I watched a documentary this past weekend that I think it's on Netflix, and I'm going to flub the title. I think it's called The Greatest Night, or it's about the making of We Are the World.
Oh,
And
yes.
so fabulous. So fabulous. I highly recommend it. It like puts you right back there, and to see how that came together, what Quincy Jones did, what oh my God, why is Lionel Richie, what they were able to
The
throw
Greatest
together.
Night in
And
Pop.
all,
That's what it was called. The
yes,
Greatest
thank
Night
you.
in
The
Pop.
Greatest Night
Yeah,
in Pop.
We Are the World
Fabulous.
documentary.
Yeah.
I started
Love
it and
Gave me
haven't finished
goosebumps.
yet. Now I know what I'm doing tonight.
Yeah, so fantastic.
Actually, I got a
Okay.
flight to Baltimore or to Boston tomorrow. I'll take it down
Watch
on
it
a
on
plane.
that.
That'll be awesome. Yeah.
Okay, 2 last questions. Favorite Gen X era word or phrase?
In the house.
That would not have occurred to me. I love that.
Gen X is in the house. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And what are you most proud of being raised as a Generation X?
I think it's how I'm raising my boys and how my wife and I are raising our boys to have that, the values and experiences that we had in Gen X, kind of be paramount to what they could be experiencing now, to get them off of screens. And I to kind of take a Gary Vaynerchuk approach to screens. There's more screens in these kids' lives than there is less. So they have to know how to use it. They have to be able to embrace technology. But taking that the grittiness that we learned in Gen X, the independence, the resilience, and making sure that they know that, in addition to the importance of the sense of community, the sense of family. I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of being raised in Gen X.
Yeah.
In addition to that, having people like you say, I would have never pegged you for a hip hop junkie is probably something else. But hey, listen, I do have Dave Matthews on my iPod. My iPod, you hear that? Holy cow! On my iPhone.
Right?
My playlist does have some grunge metal and things when I'm running, but yeah.
No, I hear you. If I'm ever in kind of a funky mood, Rob Bass pulls me out of it every single time. Every single time. It takes two, joy and pain. Right. Like, yeah, absolutely. So
yes.
Thank you so much, Will. I am so
Thank
grateful
you for having
me. For our connection, for all the wisdom that you imparted. I really think that folks are going to get some juicy nuggets and some big wisdom truth bombs out of the
I hope so. Yeah, this is fun. And I think that's the best part of our generation is we kind of take an unfiltered approach to some of the things we talk about. And we have to keep doing that. I wish that filter would come off of a lot of other folks and a lot of other generations and a lot of other avenues too. But I appreciate what you're doing for our generation, and the mindset shifts that are important that you talk us through. And I'm pretty excited. I know there's big things coming from you and your organization and your business as well that I'm excited to see.
Thanks. Well, yeah, this has been great. I'm gonna have to call this like Will Hoffman Unplugged or something. Great.
Careful.
Great
My
episode.
wife will be at home saying, no, plug them back in.
All right. Thank you so much, Will. Take care.
Thank you. Likewise.
What did I tell you? That conversation was jam-packed. I know I had some really important takeaways from that conversation with Will, and I'm so excited to get into the free resources that he's providing for us. So make sure to check out the show notes on the episode webpage. It's lifefromthesummit.com/podcast/5 to find all of your resources and the additional show notes. Will is a financial planner who I feel comfortable talking to. He's a financial planner with some heart. And I think that says a lot. So if you're looking for somebody to shepherd you through this financial journey of our 40s and beyond and into retirement, Will's going to be your guy. Let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. If you have any questions or thoughts about a future episode that you'd like me to tackle, let me know. Send me an email at podcast@lifefromthesummit.com. Of course, please rate, review, and share the episode on all of the podcasting platforms that you listen to them on. And until next time, stay gold, Gen Xers.